Okay, so I am going to create this video. Or I should say the subject of this video is really looking at an overview of dimensioning and making sure that we're keeping in mind all the important things as we're creating these drawings, especially these early ones that we're working on. So because there is a lot to know to dimensioning. So first and foremost, as we are creating our drawings, we are going to be bringing in our border. Our border is going to come in, and we have to create it. Usually have to bring it in at a scale. Now I'm looking at our CAM drawing at the moment. And when I brought this one in, I didn't have to make it any larger or smaller. So when you pull it in, you're going to be able to kind of view it over the top of your views that you have created. And you'll kind of get a sense for, do I need to make that border larger or smaller? And if you have to make it larger to get around there, that's totally fine. So you would enter in a 1.5 we've seen, or a 2, or whatever it might be. Now, for the assignments that you have for Module 5 application drawings, you need to duplicate what I have. So I already have the borders pulled in. You need to look down here at the scale box in the border. If it says 1:1, that means you're not scaling it at all, technically. You're just pulling it in at its actual size. And that's what we have here. But if it says, for instance, 1 to 1.5, then when you are prompted for a scale for that border, you need to put in 1.5. Okay, so then now it's going to scale it up 1.5 times its normal value. Now that is important because as we look at the text for the dimensioning, okay, you'll notice that, and it's kind of easier to see when you're closer down here. My text for my dimensions are the same size as what is in the title block. Okay, I have been noticing a lot where students will hand in and this text will be smaller on the drawings where we're scaling up that border. So for instance, when you're pulling this in at 1.5, the text in your border is going to be larger than if you just start dimensioning, because then your dimensions are going to be to a 1:1 scale. So what I want to do is I want to show you real quickly how to adjust that. And you can't do this until after you've pulled in your border, because your border is going to let you know what the scale is that you need to set the dimensions to. So there are 1 or 2 places that you can go to do this. Now I have my, I'm going to kind of pull it down here so we can see it. I have my toolbar for dimensionings out, okay? And that way that all of these are kind of expanded and I can pick the ones that I want more easily, and it's just available. Additionally, on this toolbar, I can change my dimensioning scheme as I need to more efficiently. Okay, it's right here. And then lastly, the dimension style manager is right at the end here. And that's where I want to go into. Now, if you want to pull your toolbars out, you've got to go to Tools, Toolbars, AutoCAD, and then click on this dimension toolbar. Okay. I know many of you have been using this, so that's there. The other place that you can get at it is if you go to the Annotate tab, and here's the dimensioning like area. It's this little arrow right here will pull up that box. So either here or at the end of the toolbar, either one will get us that dimension style manager. So I'm going to click on it here, and this comes up that familiar box. So the other thing, as we're in here, you need to look at the decimal places that you're putting onto your drawing. They have to match. Okay, so if I've seen a number of them come in at 4 decimal places, that means that you never changed your dimension style here to a 2 or a 3 place. Now the 2 and 3 place we set up in the template. So as long as you're current with your templates, those should be there in the correct format. Okay. But if you didn't, then it's in your best interest to do that, because it makes it more efficient. You don't have to do it each time, but you can't leave it at standard, because that's going to be a 4-place decimal. I know right away you didn't do it, and it doesn't match what's in the box and what's on the guides. We'll talk about the guides in a little bit, but to get this changed, modify, and you're going to go to the Fit tab. Remember, there's all these tabs along the top. The Fit tab has your overall scale. And when it is something other than, I'm sorry, in this case, it's 1, all right? But let's say you pulled in your border at 1.5, that 1 needs to be changed to 1.5. Or you pulled it in at 2, that number 1 needs to be changed to 2. Whatever the scale is that you pulled your border in, you need to change the scale on that Fit tab, okay? And now what's going to happen is when you change it, your text will be the correct height. Now, let's say you dimensioned and it's the wrong height. you can go in afterwards and anything that was on that dimension style, for instance, anything that is on the, anything that is on that 2 place. So I'm actually going to modify mine. I'm going to change it to 2. Okay. And you'll see that up here, the picture just got bigger. So anything on that style now, I'm going to set it as current. I'm going to close everything updated. Okay. But notice that everything is kind of overlapped and not right. You need to now go back and adjust all of those. Okay. And move them away and that kind of thing. Now on this one, I'm going to send it back. But you'll also notice that not everything changed. Notice that this one right here, this is a 3-place with the tolerance. That's not the same dimension style. So I would have to go back in and I would have to go to that dimension style. This is the 3-place plus or minus 5 thousandths. I need to modify it, change it to whatever scale I want it to be. Now, again, I'll be changing these back. Set as current and then close. And now that one updated as well. So all of your text on a drawing, including any notes that you create, have to be the same size. Okay. And that's how you control it. At first, pulling in your borders, seeing what scale you're going to have to put it at. And then after that, adjusting it to match. So I'm going to change mine back. So I'm going to go back to modify. I'm going to go back to 1. And okay on that one, set current, and then I'm going to close, make sure that one goes back. And then I'm going to do the very same thing on my 2-place, modify, put it back to 1. And this is really the very reason why you need to pull your border in first and then do your dimensions and notes. Okay. Because otherwise you don't know. Now, any questions on that? And I'll peek back at Zoom to see if there are any. I don't see anything in the chat, but if there are, you can either verbalize them or put them in the chat. Okay. So that's a good reminder. So if you got any feedback on your drawing saying that your text isn't matching, and I tried to put a description of go to the fit tab and change the scale, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. The other thing, when you're pulling your drawings in here, when you're pulling your border in, I'm noticing that students aren't taking up and making your views proportional to the border, meaning you're keeping your views super close together, like probably how you drew them out. You have this entire border to spread things out now. So once you have everything created and you've maybe used your miter line, things do cluster together in that construction, but now you've got things constructed. You can pull, and you want to pull these views out so that there's room between them. It makes it easier to see, and proportionally it's on the border. So pull these out. If I say space your views out, or your views are too close together, that's what I'm talking about. Because like I said, I'm seeing like these 3 views like real close together, whether they're in the middle or to the side, but you want to proportionally spread them out, and you want to be kind of even in the drawing border. So you'll notice I have a gap of about this far from the right-hand side. It's about that same gap from the left-hand side as well of the part. Okay. As we're looking here, a reminder, when possible, I know that there are some exceptions to this, but this is only when you don't have room for it. I'm seeing a lot of, especially angle dimensions on the part. You have to pull them off, and they have to be on extension lines, unless you don't have room. And we've seen just a couple examples, maybe 1 or 2 of those, but that's the exception. So what I'm talking about is you can't have this here. Okay. And even if it doesn't overlap, but I mean, you cannot have one of the extension lines, if you would, that you're dimensioning to on an angle to be part of the part. That's dimensioning on the part. You need to pull this away all the way out so that we have 2 extension lines. Now, again, it's only an exception if you absolutely can't do it, but you've got to, most often we can find ways to do it. There are very few exceptions to that. So that is the standard, to pull them away. Additionally, we cannot have any overlapping dimensions. We cannot have any overlapping dimensions. Why did this dimension go to? Oh, you know what? I think in that process, they moved around a little bit. Hold on. Let me get this back. I'm like, that is ugly. Let me get this closer over here. I'm like, why are those like all weird? Is this going to move for me? There we go. Get your dimension. These all spread out. I'm not sure why. Again, it might have been in that whole me changing that scale. They might have moved around a little bit. You also want to make sure that your dimensions are nice and close and nothing is overlapping. Okay. I've been seeing that. Additionally, you don't want to be too close to the part. So for instance, if I have, I'll use this example. If I go here, this is way too close to the part. Okay, way too close. You've got to give the part room. Okay, so pull your things away from the part, and again, making sure that you have enough space. And when I pulled the borders in, when you use the same scale that I did, you'll have plenty of room, especially if you adjust those views to be further apart. Let me see, text must be the same size. Oh, adjust your LT scale so that we can see the dashes on your lines. Just because they're on the right layer doesn't mean that you have them to the right size. And it really comes into play probably more so in metric drawings than in English as much. But if I want to change the scale, remember, if I can do it for the overall drawing by just typing in LT scale. Okay, that means line type scale, LT scale, and it's going to ask you, what is your factor? I have mine at 0.5. Let's see what 1 was. They're further apart. And sometimes when we have smaller things, we're not seeing the gradient, the differences. So for instance, when we're up here, sometimes even at the 1, you might see this as a solid line. That can't be. Okay, you've got to look at that in each one of your views. So then we do line type scale, and I usually start with 0.5 and see how that looks. And I look, am I seeing dashes in all of the views? And in this case, yes, I am. Okay, so especially when you have shorter lines like this, you want to be able to see that. Otherwise, it looks like solid lines. And remember, when you print this out, it's probably going to be in black and white. You're not going to be able to distinguish these colors. So you have to set your line type scale appropriate so that when you look at the drawing as a whole, do I see those hidden lines, for instance, with the dashes? Do I see the center lines with the dashes as well? Can you get the door, please? Or put the thing in? Thank you. One other thing that I noticed, and I had a number of people do this, the scale. When you call the scale out inside of your border, the scale needs to be 1:1 in this case. Don't just put the number 1. That's not a scale, okay? So what you're doing is you're comparing two things. You're comparing the scale that the drawing is drawn at in relationship to the border. Okay, so that's why you have to have this, 2 numbers with a colon in between. Okay, with a colon in between. So make sure that that you're doing that. I saw that more than a couple times, which I was kind of surprised at. Additionally, there's one other thing here that I'm looking at our text. When we put our symbols in, and I'm gonna double click this. I'm gonna do some symbols. I'm gonna add them at the end here. No, I don't want to do that. There we go. There we go, space. I'm going to add a line, and I'm going to add some symbols here. This is a little goofy, and there isn't any other thing we can do except deal with it. I'm going to add maybe a counterbore in here, a counterbore symbol. I'll put that down there, select, and I usually have a depth of some sort. I'm going to get rid of this, select, and you can put a couple of these in here. I always like to put a space in between so that we did this last time. That way we can do it in one copy paste. So this is a copy. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to, in the background here, right click back into my box and hit paste. What you will see here, okay, and as I zoom in, you can see it. This is a smaller text size than this. All the text has to match. Okay, so when you add in, for instance, your symbol for your diameter, and this is going to be, I'm just putting 0.75. I'm just using an example here. And then my depth is going to be 0.25. Okay. This line is smaller than the original text and the rest of the text on our drawing. What we need to do is we need to activate this. We need to select all of that text. We're going to go up to underneath or above our style area here, and we're going to change it all to the same size, which is, notice that it's at 0.0939. I don't know why. It just does it every single time, but now you've got to bring it back to the actual size and then increase the, where was it? Come on, there we go. Increase it so it's on the same level, okay? And then once that's there, you can click outside and now everything is the same size, okay? So you do have to kind of play around with that and adjust it so everything is the same size. Even, yeah, you just do, okay? So make sure that that's the case. The other thing that I've seen, and I guess I don't see a 2x here. Let's look at another drawing. Let me go on the adjuster. Oh, we'll go to that one in a little bit. Let me can check. Oh, okay. This one, let me see if I've got a 2x. Yep, here we go. You notice that there is a 2x here. I've been seeing the X as a lowercase. Every letter on a drawing needs to be in uppercase. Every one. Okay, so I've been mentioning that as well. Let's talk about this drawing itself. So this one is to a 1 to 1.5 scale. So when I brought that in, I had to bring it in 1.5. So here again, I would need to first and foremost go to my dimension style manager and I would modify whatever, and it has to be each and every one of these styles. If you do one of them, it doesn't cross over to the next one. But then I have to go into that fit tab and change this to, in this case, the 1.5. Okay, so I'm going to just hit cancel. If I go to any one of these other ones, modify, fit, 1.5, they all have to be done separately. Sorry, that's just how it has to be. So you can't change one and it crosses over. All right, so make sure that you do that. Additionally, these radiuses need to look like this. If you point to this and it has the landing and it's off, they share the same center. And I showed you how to get that. Okay, I showed you how to get that. There's two purposes here. Number one, it's the best way to show it because you can see that they all share the same center. And number two, it's exploring another way to create that radius. Okay, so to do that one, we're going to go back into the Dimension Style Manager and we're going to go to modify. I just have to remember. Oh, oh no, it is on the fit tab as well. You have to make sure that the arrows are checked here and then also beside, oh no, it's not that one. Hold on, let me see. Hold on. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, modify. And arrows is going to be the one that we have here. Okay, so make sure that that's checked and then you should be able to get that dimension on the inside here. Okay, otherwise it's going to like point to it and then there's going to be a landing. It's not going to depict and it's not going to come from its actual center. Okay, so make sure you're paying attention to that. Here's a case too. I've had a number of people. This is on the actual part. No. This has to be off the part. You need to duplicate as closely as possible what I have here on this drawing for placement of the dimensions and how they look. Okay, so for instance, the 1.75 dimension has to be up in the top view, up overhead here, exactly where I have it placed. Okay, no exceptions at all. I'm looking for that. And the reason for that is number one, I want you to develop good habits. And once you are using this as your guide, you still have to put them all in place. You still have to change all the styles. There's a lot here to know. And you might be like, well, I'm just copying it. Yeah, for right now you are. And that is probably something that you're going to do when you get out in industry to get used to the company's standards. Okay, you can't just start going off the way you think. And as we're learning these standards, there's a lot. I mean, I'm kind of going over these things again, and you can interpret them probably 3 different ways. But I'm kind of your boss right now, okay? And I'm grading you on this. So you need to follow the rules that I'm setting out. And the best way that I can do that is to give you examples to follow, okay? So what your job right now is to just duplicate what's there, use the AutoCAD tool to get things placed, and then be kind of, in the background, you're developing good habits. Because believe me, the last 2 weeks here, there's not going to be many guides anymore, okay? And then you're going to have to recall how to and where to put these in the best way, okay? Now, I'm not saying that there's not other ways to dimension, but for right now, this is it, okay? So make sure that before you hand in, you look at that guide and you compare your drawing to that guide. And the guides are going to be found, we should know this. The guides are going to be found here in module number 5 for this assignment in the application drawings. Okay. So when we click here, all of these guides down here, the PDFs are the ones that you want to look at. So which one was I looking at? Well, whichever one. I'm going to look at the index feed. This is the PDF. Okay. So you should have this up. You could have it printed out, and making sure that every line, every dimension, every style, everything is laid out right here. This is how you need to hand this in. If I notice on the first 3 drawings, and this has happened, that are handed in, and I notice that there is a number of things that aren't correct, I am not going to sit and list. Okay, that's 9 drawings that I have to go through and pick out every little thing and then list it in there. That takes a lot of time. And if you didn't take the time to compare your work to the guide, then I'm not going to take the time to go through each one. It's a give and take. All right. So if I notice that, what I will do is I will say, go back and compare to the guides. All right. You have to make it the same as the guides. And I'll point out a couple things, but then I'll tell you, I didn't look at all the drawings. Go back and do this for each one. Okay. Because my assumption is it's probably going to be the very same things with each and every one. So it's like your rubric. Okay. I'm going to say it is your rubric. You need to duplicate this. Okay. So you need to pull in the border the same size. You need to fill in the information, your initials, of course. And then up here, you're spacing these views out, making them look good on the drawing. You're placing the dimensions in the exact same spot. You're making sure that your dimension style, your sizes are all correct. There's a lot here. You might say, I'm copying. Yeah, okay, right now you are. But you're learning how to use AutoCAD, the tool, to get it to be where it's to the standards, okay? And that's what we're using. We're using all of the standards appropriately to make sure, because if you go off on your own, then all of a sudden everything is going to look different, and a person's not going to be able to interpret your drawing. There's going to be a lot of questions, okay? And you can forget things. Remember, we're learning a graphical language, and there's a lot here, okay? So any questions about this so far? All right. Decimal places, dimension manager, I did that. Center lines, I see those missing a lot. Make sure that you're putting your center lines in appropriately. All caps. Oh, hatching. When we need to do hatch, all right? And I mean, here's another place too. You might be like, well, there's so many cool options. There really are, okay? But if I'm going to go to hatch, I've got to go on my hatch layer. I'm just going to create a circle over here that I'm going to hatch within. And I'm gonna go to the hatch tab. You need to use the steel for right now, the steel or the cast iron, these two. Don't go and use anything crazy. Okay. Again, duplicating what I have. I know it's boring. Engineering sometimes is pretty boring. All right. Everybody likes to have the same thing. And really it's for the sake of ease of use, but hatches actually correspond to different types of materials. And the one that we're using here, okay, right here is steel. And we've been pretty much calling everything steel. All right. So really the main thing with the hatch is that when you go over here is that you can see the difference. Now you don't want them to be too close together or too far apart. Now this is a little close together. You know, as I look at the proportionist drawing, I would then adjust the scale, which is right here. And I can just, say 2 times, and I'm going to go back in here. And now it's further apart. Okay. Sometimes, especially on the metric drawings, and we'll look at a metric drawing, there are some more adjustments that we have to make because of that scaling factor of the 25.4 millimeters in an inch. Okay. Any questions on this drawing at all? It's getting longer than I thought it would. I thought it would be really short. Let's look at a metric drawing because I want to be sure that you notice a couple things on there as well. Now I got to remember that. Oh, this one is the adjuster base. This is good. Adjuster base. Okay. First and foremost, okay, notice that our values here are all in millimeters. This is a 1 to 2 on what we call a B size border in metric. It would be an A3 border you have to pull in for this one. Okay. When you do your values in your, and we did set this up as a standard, but if I go to my dimension style manager, okay, and I'm on the 0 place right now, I'm going to go to modify. And you got to change this then to the scale that your border was brought in at. In this case, it was 2. The other thing that I want to remind some people about is you'll notice that there are extensions beyond the dimensions. I've seen this a couple times and it's only on the metric drawings. You got to go back through the lines here and make sure that you change them all to be the metric equivalent, meaning if this is supposed to be 0.125, that means that I have to multiply that by 25.4 and then it's 3.175 or 3.2 is fine. Okay. So you need to change those. This is an offset. Then I'm going to go to symbols and arrows. Here you have to change that arrow size. Text size. There's the fit. And then I think, so all of these baseline spacings, that kind of thing. So make sure that it's that you're changing all of those values so that you don't get like nothing beyond, because some of them are cutting off right here. And I have a feeling it's because it's not converted over. Okay. So make sure that you have all of those adjusted properly. On these, the line type scale. Okay. Line type scale, let me remember, LT scale. Okay, you're going to notice that mine is set at 18. If you leave this at 1, those are going to look like continuous lines because they're going to be super close together. Okay, and I call you out on that because on the drawing you have to be able to see the dashes. So you have to put in LT scale and something around 20. And sometimes, especially on this drawing right here, if I put in, for instance, 20, sometimes they get a little wide and you're not seeing the dashes like around this corner here. So if I do LT scale and I do 18, now I'm adjusting it for all of them. Now I see a little bit more of a difference. Okay. So, so make sure that you're adjusting the LT scale so that you can see things. Here too, text was very off. So for instance, the text style that you have for each one of the section callouts, I saw this actually forgotten a couple times. So section AA, BB, CC have to correspond to the letters here. These letters, all of the letters have to be the same size as the text, okay? As the text. So again, if you go back to the annotate tab, and you go to the text, make sure that this is set to annotate, that you have it on the standard, okay, the exact same way that we set it up on the template. If you didn't do this, then you're struggling with it, okay? Go back to, I think it was the beginning of module 5 and look at the lecture there. I'm not going over all that again. And then set that to current, and it's going to then follow the dimensions, okay? Sometimes they'll go in and then you just have to adjust them to whatever the size needs to be, okay? So, so keep that in mind. All of the text on here has to be the same size, including matching whatever is in the title block. On this one, on the left-hand side, this is 37. It is not 38. It is not 38. I'm getting 38s over here. This is 25 to the center plus a 12-inch or 12 millimeter radius. It's 37, and that is set in this view right here. Oopsie, this view right here by the boss. The boss is 25 up, and it has a radius of 12 in that view down there in the picture, but you have to show it as a diameter because it is a full diameter. It's a boss, and that sets the height of, you know, this portion right here. So that's a 37 based on those two dimensions. And I added in a couple places just because to add clarity. All right. Make sure here too, this one, the dimensions are close together. End of story. They just are because of the size of the text as well as the border. So what you need to do is you need to work with that. Everything is fit on the way I have it. You need to duplicate it. Do not overlap dimensions. Okay. Do not overlap dimensions. Any questions on this one? All right, let's just look at a couple more to make sure I did the guide, angle guide. Okay, this one. This one is an auxiliary view looking straight up. Okay, you have to put a section through here so that you can dimension that 25 degrees to a line that is not hidden. Okay, that's why the section has to go through here. I did an offset section, you'll notice, so you have to duplicate that as well. You do not need to label it because it's the only section on the drawing. Also, when you are creating the limits for a diameter dimension, you need to use the diameter dimension. Do not use the liter. I can tell right away. All right, you have to use the dimension. So you'll have to set up then a dimension style that has the plus or minus on it. Okay, we have to do that for each one that's a little bit different. We talked about that in one of the lectures. I think it was maybe on Monday's lecture. Okay. Here too, this is a diameter dimension. This is not a liter. Okay. We need to identify the tolerance that's there. And I pull these up. Remember, I'm getting your files so I can check it. All right. And I know right away. So then what you're not doing is you're not using AutoCAD the way that we're trying to practice using it. Okay. And that's probably the biggest part of this, being able to use AutoCAD to get the drawings to where they need to be. All right. I'm looking. Are there any chat messages? Maybe everybody's tuned me out by now. I don't know. Here's another one. I'm trying to think on this one. Yeah, just don't deviate. Just don't deviate. Do it exactly the way that you see here. All right. Exactly the way you see here. Index feed, we looked at a little bit. The roller stud, we looked at. Tool holder. Oh, this is like, the tool holder is challenging. But again, make sure that, you know, your top view looks the way I have it here. Make sure that you have all the dimensions where they are. Don't deviate. Don't deviate. This comes in at a 1.5, so make sure your text matches. Okay. And I think that's all that I really, wanted to go over. It's not a lot, and it has to do with those the dimension styles. They are a pain in the butt in AutoCAD. It's just kind of the way the tool works. Okay. But by using it more and more, you just kind of get used to it, and you learn to work with it. Okay. So with that, I am going to, I'll put this video out here after we're done with our session today. And then it'll be available for anybody to review. Okay. So that's it. That's all that I wanted to point out. So hopefully that's helpful as you're going to be handing in. All right. I'm going to stop recording.